Hello viewers, it's me again with another submarine. This is probably the most successful one that I've uploaded to the workshop, and to be honest it is probably one of the better ones. This is the Hammer of the Deep, which is I believe the name is actually a reference to Gears of War, not Halo, but never mind. And it is based on a Charon-class or Charon-class light frigate, which is prominently seen in Halo 2 and 3. It's, like most of my submarines, probably a little bit overpowered for vanilla. Actually quite overpowered for vanilla. But it is a tier 3, so I can justify it a little bit. Today, instead of just playing a bunch of missions in a row, I'm just going to basically walk through the submarine and demonstrate all of its features. So I'm sure you're itching to know what that is. Tell you what, I won't even save it to the end, I'll just show you. So in a standard Charon-class submarine, they actually have a Mach gun here, I'm pretty sure, or it might be up there actually. But anyway, you can see it blow up a big shield generator in Halo Reach, and it's pretty cool. Obviously, couldn't really get the effect of a Mach cannon, which is, if you don't know, a giant railgun in Barrows, so instead I put 4 pulse lasers together and made them continuously fire. As you can see, it has 2 different boxes loaded, and just a little under half drains them. I have tested it. It will kill a Latcher in one burst if you keep the beam on him the entire time, at least on the body, and it will strip the armor off of an endworm. It's actually not very effective against enemy submarines, which is a shame, because I wanted to be able to carve holes into pirates, and I suppose you could use it for PvP. You can fire it even if it isn't fully charged. It'll be a more lackluster beam. You can even hold it down and it'll occasionally shoot, but you can't really aim it up or down. You've got to coordinate with the captain to aim the thing. Which is why I made this little... I actually designed this ship in mind for a bigger group. So this front bit, it looks like a navigation, but it actually doesn't have any controls for that. What this is essentially where the navigator would sit, not the, I suppose, helmsman. And what they have is a sonar transducer on the front of the ship that lets you see much further ahead. Very useful for the gun. Of course, you're a bit more blind to behind, so you might want the navigator occasionally checking either direction. The navigator also has access to a status monitor, which the helmsman on this ship doesn't. It's pretty easy if you're a decently experienced captain to just run between the consoles, but I really like cooperation in multiplayer Barrow especially, so the idea of 2 people up in the helm actually communicating with each other. The captain obviously piloting the ship, is able to control the afterburners, which, if you watch the previous Maddox class video, essentially just gives you a big burst of speed at the expense of a lot of power. Exact same setup, just a little bit more powerful because it needs to move a 73 meter long submarine. Very nice. Now, the other thing they can control is they can toggle a periscope, which is this periscope here. You can see above or below the submarine. You can also close the shutters, just in case that glass, which is a weak spot, gets broken. It can be useful to see out there. I like doing it on the big rig, but yeah. That's the submarine. So yeah, ideally you'd have like a navigator. It kind of works a little bit more like, maybe more of a mission control, calling out what needs to be done on the ship while the captain focuses on driving. This door here is the airlock into the rest of the, you know, if you're docked to the station, you can't open it without it being docked. It's one of those kinds. This motto, I believe, is actually on something in Halo. I don't remember, but the place I saw it was in the Havoc mod for Halo CE, which if you haven't played it is an amazing mod, a lot of fun. But it's Exitus Acta Probat. I'm probably fucking up the pronunciation, as I often do. As far as I know, that means the ends justify the means, basically. There's a little lock you can put on the door to keep it shut. Yeah. All in all, like, I'm very trying to go for a more military vibe for this submarine. Got a little ready room in here. Diving gear you might need. The airlock toggles here. I'm really sad about this. In the campaign, it seems as though they... Uh-oh. Well, goodbye, Wilford. It seems like in the campaign they put like a glow effect around the submarine. And it cancels out the effect. But I really, when I was designing this, I liked that the airlock is somewhat well lit. When you cycle it, it goes blood red. Very eerie. Still out there, maybe I can... I suppose I shouldn't so callously throw away the life of my senior officer. He should be able to get back in on his own. I'm sure the bot can handle it. Well, he's in, is he? We can get back into the airlock at least. As you can see, there's little labels to show what floor you're on and what direction everything is in. I found these pretty handy for dealing with my newer group of friends who aren't as experienced with this game as me. This is the cafeteria, which, on the note of this being inspired by Halo, these nutrition names are reminiscent of some of the things you can see in Halo CE's little like food dispensary area. I always like that cafeteria. It's the first place you fight elites. But as you can see, the food dispenser is out of order. Press it anyway. Yeah, something's very, very, very wrong with the machine. Actually, I think it just does that for a while. So this character is now nauseous, and if someone else was to examine them, they're insane. But I'm sure they'll be fine. We'll just switch characters anyway, so we don't have any hallucinations distracting us. But yeah, I tried to make a more lived-in, kind of grungy cafeteria. I put the jukebox in before they added the music to it, so now it's just on by default, but I don't mind it. Up here is the reactor, and here's the battery rooms with some of the junctions. There's quite a few junctions on this submarine. It's very power hungry. These little maintenance nooks, maybe you could hide in these if you're a trader, or, you know, hide things. I think there's a, yeah, this is one of the loose vents on the submarine for the trader mode. I'm pretty fond of this reactor setup. I put a little, like, subtle glow at the top there. I think it feels really dangerous. Probably suit any reactor mods that make the reactor hazardous pretty well. A little hazardous thing. I'm very fond of this globe, this glass dome bit. And yeah, has its stripes too. Cabinet. Here's all of the supercapacitors for all the weapons. Each individually toggle. I should label them, to be honest. That's probably something I could add in an update to the submarine. This is basically just an access way, but I put these little status monitors near where the engineer hangs out and near where the mechanic hangs out. Make it a little easier to keep tabs on the ship. This is the afterburner. Can't really mess with it at all. It's just turned on and off from the helm, but when it becomes damaged, you need to repair this supercapacitor, which I will actually show you Here's electrical. Got this little battery cabinet. I was trying to go for a Halo C Pillar of Autumn vibe, at least without the anniversary graphics. It kind of became its own thing after a while. Still, these muted kind of military colors is what I was going for. While the afterburners are active, I'm really fond of this. The thing smokes and turns red because it's set to max default. You could turn it down lower without any real effect, but I like it glowing red hot when the submarine's being pushed to its limits, and that will break really quick too. My engineer, when we played this in multiplayer, was like to remind me how quickly it broke if I strained it too much. So as you can see, is the electrical room. It doesn't have any vents in it, so it's actually very well protected from flooding. Since this is a warship after all, it's designed for dealing with all kinds of nasties. I went for a yellow lighting in the ballasts, just to try and get a bit more of an industrial look, I suppose. But, you know, at least, you know, yellow light's meant to make you calm, right? Chill out in the ballasts, the icy waters of Europa. If we head right, we can get into the crew's locker room, which I'm pretty fond of and proud of. I had medical cabinets in these washing machines, and they are actually tagged so that the bots, if they find loose clothes, will throw them in, which I think is kind of funny. And a pair of rare outfits in there just for the sake of it. Here are the toilets. Quite neglected on submarines. If you're playing trader mode, I guess you could hide in them, or, you know, if you want to RP. There is exactly 16 lockers on this ship, which I think is the max capacity for players in multiplayer. So, you know, you could have your own individual locker. I could keycard lock them, but it's, you kind of have to do that based on class, which I did later do in another submarine. But at the moment, these are just open. As you can see, they've got a little character to them. Each one's a slightly different shade. The letters help differentiate. P appears to be leaking some liquid. I guess someone left like a sandwich in there. K has a tally on it, and as you can see, M, and this is actually done for a reason. M appears to have been exploded, and they had to put an entirely different type of locker in there. Because it's just the one they were able to get on another station, away from where this thing was put together. The reality of why I did that was because, for some reason, all the letters you can get in Barotrauma, these little decals of letters, are mostly uniform except for M. It's a weird size and shape, so I thought, okay, well, let's work with that and just make it an entirely different piece of hardware, essentially. Here is the memorial, which I am fond of writing down the names of bots that die and putting them in this. Got a nice quote from Halo 3 here. You know, anyone born in, like, you know, probably pre-2006 will probably want to salute after reading it. At least I do. Try to give the impression that the ship's bigger than it is with this little back bit that leads into sort of lockers. This is sort of an access way thingy. It leads down into the ballast. That's the main purpose of it. It's also a drain that drains the top of the submarine through here into the bilge, which is located under medical. We'll look at that later, but there's another status monitor here. Easy to check on. Check the state of the ship. Down here leads into the lower ballast, which is the entire bottom prong of the sort of fork of the ship. You can open it, which will gradually flood into the med bay. I don't know why I did that, I guess I just thought it was cool. But yeah, big ballast. You can imagine how nasty it'd be if it's not filled with ballast flora. These big tubes. We'll find out what those are later. Here is the gunnery. It is probably the biggest room on the ship. As you can imagine, with a warship covered in guns, we need a lot of gun ports. The front gun here is a twin-linked chain gun with a slight boost to its fire rate and a slight debuff to its accuracy. We achieve accuracy through volume here. And we think, oh, that's incredibly unbalanced, what are you doing? No, it's not. That was almost that was close to a third of our ammunition supply. Close to a quarter, sorry. And just a quick little demonstrative wise, and there's a little standard chain gun that sort of helps protect the back. So, the other thing is, this has 4 coil gun batteries on it. And I designed them with a delay component to fire in a burst. This is before I found out that you can actually tweak the values of the turrets themselves, or at least... No, actually, I think what it actually was I was lazy. I shouldn't lie to you, Internet, I'm sorry. But I like the vibe of this big warship with many guns all firing in a sequence together. And if you are as much of a autist about Halo as I am, you might notice something familiar about the firing pattern. That's right. That is the Halo 2 battle rifle's exact fire rate. How do I know that it is? Because when I was building the submarine, I spent half an hour listening to a 11-second YouTube clip of the battle rifle being fired in full auto and comparing it. Is there a better way to do it? Almost certainly, but I lack the ability, I'm afraid. I'm a Luddite. But yeah, I like the vibe of the sort of mesh overhead. I remember I used to have an uncle who worked in a console repair shop, like this sort of little indie place, and he put this like military mesh over the roof, and it looked really cool. Helped sell that it was like kind of like an underground thing. Nothing illegal, of course, but yeah, just the vibe. And that was like in the middle of the 2000s. It was a perfect time for me to see that kind of cool stuff. Now, when bots swap the ammunition for these things, the guns, it usually drops onto the floor. I don't like that, so I made these little baskets to catch the loose ammunition. Throw it loose, they also sit on it. I'm pretty fond of it. The bots, what that is platforms hidden underneath some mesh and some background materials. What that means is if you hold up, you'll actually hop onto them as well. Maybe there's a tactical use for that, but I know it looks really strange when the bots run through and do this because they're trying to go up. Because they aren't good at differentiating height between platforms they're running through if the waypoints that guide their movement is just there. I'm rambling a bit, but the next room. Now, unfortunately, I'm not going to go in there because it's very irradiated. That is the heat sink for the pulse lasers, and unfortunately, the crew have to climb in there to reload the actual laser and repair the junction whenever we use the what I like to call the Giga laser. The next room, this button activates these 2 depth charge loaders. So that's what the tubes you saw earlier are. They continue all the way down to the bottom of the ship. Just a little bit below kind of, I guess, the cleft of the jaw, if you wanted to use weird anatomical references like I do. And yeah, I just like the vibe of, a security sitting in here being like, Captain, when is it time? When is it time? And the captain goes, alright, we're over position, fire away. Beep. Now, they have a big delay between the 2 tubes because when I was testing, if you loaded 2 nukes, they would often blow each other up, And sometimes if you weren't far enough from your target, which isn't that far by the way, you kind of need to be able to see them on the sonar to get an idea of what it is. The first nuke would go off on the target, the second nuke will get triggered by the first one's explosion and then blow up the entire bottom of the submarine. And that's not good design, so they made it a much bigger delay. Now if you blow the bottom off of this submarine, it's probably your fault. Or you got exceeding unlucky with monsters. There's a bunch of... The mods I have spawned a bunch of random weapons in here. But here's the armory, as you can see. There's a nice racks for some nice depth charges, which you can't stack like you can railguns. I wonder if... Daedalic, I think they're called, the devs. I wonder if they're ever going to add that, but we've got a nice little weapon rack here. You can take, any given gun from the game and put it on these little rat holders. Hold Alt to see it a bit easier. If you just drag it, you can line up the thing. I do like the aesthetic of a caged glass box full of guns. Always like armories in games. I haven't thought of a name for him yet, but I had the idea to do this for ages. This little mud raptor bust with googly eyes on him. I'm pretty happy with how it looks. I think their eyes are actually there, or at least the vestigial remnants of their eyes. They're underneath their shell. If you ever blow one's shell off, or fight a naked one, you'll see what I mean. Now, all these lockers are designed for different varieties of guns. So, I'm actually pretty happy with this. Submachine guns, shotguns, all the base game weapons, rifles. Yeah. Light machine gun? Do I get a light machine gun? No. Even I have some restraint with giving you OP stuff. You get a bicon. But I tried to mimic the sort of UI style of Halo with these silhouettes of the guns. Those are actually weapon rollers holding a custom version of each of those guns that I just turned black and made smaller. So you have to be careful if you're selling straight from the inventory if you've stopped at a station, because you might just sell them and then, the signs won't say anything suddenly. I think that's it for floor 3. So floor 4, the bottom. This is the mission control for the drop pods, which will probably be the last thing I show you. And I might need to hop into the editor for a bit to show them, but rest assured, I'm very proud of this. Here's the med bay. A bit cramped, but I think I've expressed before that I do find all the downtime between missions to be a bit of a detriment to the game a lot of the time. Particularly with my group, that's when people start, getting bored, alt-tabbing, big box of blood. Start getting bored, alt-tabbing, checking their phone, whatever. While meanwhile the mechanic is like, no, I just need 5 more minutes. We're gonna break down all of this fucking hydroxyapatite. I need phosphorus. So I put all of it just on my submarines whenever I can, so between maintaining the submarine, the players always have something to do. So there's a research station, medifab. The medifab is actually connected to a cabinet below here, and this is meant to be where you put medicines that are ready to use, as opposed to here where the fab is, and then there's obviously your toxin cabinet. I like the way the legacy cabinets look, to be honest, but you can't connect them to things properly, and their storage capacity is wrong if you try to use them in modern barrows, so they've been put to the front layer, made non-interactable, and then I put the modern ones underneath. You can sort of see the silhouette. Beds, very good on a submarine because they can regen injuries. I made these little containment pods that basically if a crewman gets sick, we don't want the entire submarine to catch whatever they've got, so we put them in these little sealed chambers and monitor their vitals. It probably really sucks, but at least you get the privacy of a curtain. Yeah. If you're claustrophobic, you're probably not going to be in a submarine anyway, so I think you'll be alright. Alright. This is sort of just another access way with some suits. I try to spread the suits out a little bit on big submarines, because otherwise, you know, people get caught out and explode a lot, especially bots. They're not very good at predicting when a room's about to become dangerous. They just flee for a suit once it's become dangerous. Here's where all the tools are, like, you know, welders and stuff. That's where they'll spawn by default, where the bots will put them. In here, I'm kind of proud of this. Again, with sort of taking the inspiration from Halo 1, here's a cryo bay. This is where the oxygen generator is. Is there a reason to have a glass window that looks into the ballast? Probably not, but it's very handy. It gives another reason to come into this room. Because if you're a mechanic, you can hear the captain sounding off there's a breach, you're busy down here fabbing. You can run up, check to see where the breach is from this room. So otherwise this room wouldn't have much point. You can lay in the cryopods, and I'm pretty fond of how it looks. But, yeah, you know, put your stuff in there, I guess. It's good for RP. You know, you'll heal while you're in there. And because it's so cold in there, a little bit of ice, not glass, has grown down the vent there. To get the lighting effect I wanted, the room actually has an ambient light, so it's a really dark blue. It's just made all the shadows blue, so I think that's helped add a cold effect. And the frost in the edges is the edging piece for windows, to try and make it look kind of frosty or foggy. Here's where the fabs are. Pretty proud of this. 2 massive deconstructors connected to 2 containers. At least when I play, I've found that the mechanic is always busy breaking things down, so it's good to have 2 just to expedite things. Here's the fabricator. There's the cabinet that connects to it. There's a little rack here for you to put crates on. I put these special green explosive crates in the deconstructors because if you break something down in this game, it'll go into the output first, and if the output's empty, straight into a cabinet connected to it. And, you know, for the sake of letting people just binge deconstruct things, they put these cabinets in so you can have all of this, bring the deconstructed stuff straight over here, and just throw it straight into the fab. Just to try and, I guess, make some quality of life for the submarine. Another status monitor in here to check the state of the sub. Very fond of its silhouette. Down here is storage. There's also a bilge. I didn't point it out earlier, but the medbay has a bilge as well. You can pretty easily walk along the top bit and, you know, not step into the nasty, slimy bit here, but when there's breaches or any flooding on the ship, it almost all ends up here. So very quickly this part of the sub can flood. And if the submarine's good at avoiding being flooded, but once it's flooded it drains pretty slow, which is by design. I wanted to make something that was strong but not completely busted. And I think we're out of rooms to check, which means I can show you the drop pods. My lovely assistant Alalo here is going to come down here and I'll show them to you. So, if you tell a bot to wait, usually they hold position. The bots can be weird though. Yep. So, bottom here, the 4th floor, behind these giant hazard stripes, is the moon pool. You have to do some wizardry regarding gaps and holes to get worm pools to work, but it is very rewarding once they do. So you can literally just hold space and fall straight into the water if you want. If you leave it open, it will slowly start flooding up, but it's very slow. So you can pretty quickly run things off of these drop pods and back onto the submarine. The music just stopped. There it is. So these are the drop pods. They are inspired by the ODST's drop pods, as you can probably guess. They've got some features. The red button is dock or disconnect from whatever you're connected to, so it's best to not press that unless you're ready. The yellow one turns on floodlights around the pod, Very handy for caves. It's actually kind of funny that a submarine, a submachine gun has spawned in here. So, you know, it kind of mirrors the opening to Halo 2. Oh, not the opening, but the Delta Halo level of Halo 2. All we need now is a grenade launcher in that one. As you can see, there's a little label that says the name of the sub, the name of the pod, as 1 and 2. The battery here shows how long this thing can remain mobile, or remain with the lights on. If it's attached to the sub, it will charge it. It's got an oxygen generator, little cabinet full of supplies. Honestly, anything a good soldier needs when they're getting sent away. This green button opens both the doors, so when you're ready to jump out. Oops. Wait. If you're sending bots down in these, which I don't recommend you do unless you're playing multiplayer, playing single player and plan on jumping into their body, you can tell them to weld leaks and they'll fix problems if you happen to bump it into something. So, they don't quite behave like the drop pods in Halo. They're actually very good at maintaining their position, and as you'll see, they can even move pretty quickly forward and back and have their own little sonar. You can send these straight into caves and straight down to wrecks and straight down to abyss islands, and that is my favorite thing about this submarine. It took a little bit to work out how to do it, and I had seen a submarine that had a sort of mining rig you could send down, which people sat on the outside of, which was awesome. That was the Bullfish by someone on the workshop called Monolith, and it's the key inspiration. But yeah, you can send someone straight down. Fellow players, I've noticed, tend to panic quite a bit when they're going down. It is very scary. And yeah, if you thunk it into walls and stuff, because of the way Barotrauma's hull breach system works, it will actually lacerate the person inside, so you are encouraged to be careful with them. And I think that leads to some fun interactions, because you got the person up here who's flying the hell jumper, and the person on it is probably yelling like, "Oh, stop banging me into walls, stop banging me into walls, I'm breaching, oh god," panicking, and this person's just up here, chilled out, standing by the console, telling them what to do on the radio, what have you. If someone is on the submarine, not the submarine, the drop pod, it is best for them to sit down so they don't get thrown around on the inside. It'll slightly minimize how much damage they take. But yeah. Let's see, very quick. I don't think these little pods are fast enough to outrun, say, a Charybdis, but they are reasonably quick. You could shoot them past a swarm of monsters. Maybe if you're getting tied up, I've used it in a multiplayer campaign to actually stop the main craft at a beacon station, and then sent down a away team in one of these. Sent down an away team in one of these drop pods to complete a mining mission directly next to it, and that was so much fun because we were taking that campaign super seriously, speaking in character, and yeah, actually switching between it, because a lot of people don't know this. You can have different radio channels to talk to different people, and that works for the headset in-game voice as well. So I was like switching back and forth from the helm here, checking on each person, like each team, because there was 2 people in a team. It's a group of 5. Very, very fun time. But yes, I think that will free camera. That'll probably be it for the Hammer of the Deep. I hope you enjoyed my little extended presentation and rambling session. and I will see you with the next one.